and a very good evening to you all. May I at the outset thank the librarian and her staff for having part of this good activity, which I believe is something that will bind our university community together. I know today is just the start, but I hope it will sustain for a long time. And I would like to take this opportunity to just request all of you to spend a moment of observing a minute of silence to remember the numerous lives lost and the many, many families who have been affected by COVID-19. Can we just observe 1 minute of silence, please? Thank you. I know that not many people have joined, but I would like to welcome the new rector of Sri Pali, as well as the deans, the directors, the registrar bursa, heads of departments, heads of those components, the quintessential components of our university, from quality assurance to staff development, environmental authority, and so on, as well as our staff, students, and respected alumni. Now, today is the Ides of March, and I wonder how many of you would address the significance of this. But whatever those myths and misconceptions might be, today is exactly 365 days since we as a university became off campus in functioning. When we say off campus, we have little or no students with us on site, and therefore we have felt that void. Please do not think, any of you students, that we have not missed you. We have missed you terribly. But at the same time, we have to recall that this was in the name of health and safety, since a large gathering would have led to, without any purpose or without any planning, would have led to a much greater force of the pandemic and infection. No doubt the ongoing melee of over 14 months, I would say, of coping, suffering, worrying, adjusting, and not forgetting the fear that is created by this tiny virus particle, unseen to the naked eye, but coming from a non-human pool of animals, which can affect and has affected millions of human beings on our planet. This is certainly not the first time, this is certainly not the last time. But we have had to adjust to lots of changes. And let us also not forget that in the name of the Secretary General of the United Nations, who stated this quite a couple of months ago, that this is indeed a human crisis. And most fundamentally, we need to focus on people who have been the most vulnerable. So that was a call for solidarity, while even simpler individuals who were in performing arts in our region have, I quote, stated that a crisis often brings the best in you, and you discover qualities that you never knew existed within us. And that was, unquote, Rajiv Siddhartha. But no doubt, I'm sure, even if we take the University of Colombo story, it brought out the best in many of us. And also, we have coped very well as a university community, and that is due to our resilience and determination. And I thank all those who have helped us in numerous ways, sometimes knowingly and unknowingly, but we needed to make a change. And some of these changes, what I would like to highlight, might be and need to be permanent, not only because of COVID-19, but it was for our betterment. So in fact, my choice of the topic at the drop of a hat was living and working with COVID-19. But I wonder, us being a leading university, whether it should be living and learning through COVID-19. So I'll leave that to you, our listeners, but I would like to share some events, anecdotes, the challenges faced, solutions we found, and the policy changes we made. But I'm duty bound to digress that on the 14th of March and thereabouts, there were some important aspects of higher learning and education we had possibly overlooked. And in fact, COVID-19 era made us think deeper, and also we were required to make a collective response. So to go back a couple of years, maybe a decade or two, we had our own priorities. We worried about our comforts. We probably operated in little boxes and spheres. And we possibly did not really address the big picture of the role of an institute of higher education such as ours. We were actually required to meet the demand-driven growth of human capital, or as one of colleagues of Professor Pavitra Kailasapitpille from Management and Finance has termed intellectual capacity to address national development. And these are the very essence of our societal expectations, which we had probably overlooked. So I'm not just talking about university ranking, but historically for us to identify that we from universities are meant to produce responsible citizens who have developed an inquiring mind, with the sole purpose of enhancing communities, societies, and geographic regions, and no doubt the entire planet, through their ability to knowledge, create, and innovate. So no doubt we discussed these, but I do not know whether we were really serious in bringing about a change, and whether COVID-19 made us do that. So let me just redirect our minds to the fact that we needed to review our educational policies, particularly for a needs-based, purposeful change that was often overlooked. The main doubts that did arise in our minds, which probably are more meaningful now, include: did our universities passively encourage teacher-centered learning, rote learning, like tutories? Then, with the fourth industrial revolution in full swing, were we as universities fully prepared to adjust ourselves to the realities of the digital age? Were we fully geared for the third decade of the 21st century in our processes and focus on outcomes? And did we ask ourselves, would artificial intelligence and robots replace the commodified graduates whom we were producing, who were often left unemployed or struggling? So in an ideal world, our real concerns should have been: is there a good return on investment on higher education? Is self-directed learning being underscored by the traditional teacher-centered systems? Doesn't technology need to help us connect, collaborate with creation of a student-driven digitized learning? When after all, communication sectors, financial sectors, services, particularly health and education, transport, industries, markets, were gradually becoming digitized. But no doubt we were catapulted with the COVID-19. Now, how did we cope? I have to take this opportunity to remind ourselves to thank my predecessor, Professor Lakshman Dissanayake, for having paved the way with UNESCO to have a UOC UNESCO partnership from 2017, where we were the only Sri Lankan university to talk about and work towards blended learning. In fact, I remember in November 2019, when I shared this at the CVCD meeting, which we hosted in Colombo, there were no questions or comments. And I thought, well, I've kind of not done it properly. I spoke about blended learning based on the experience that I had with those of our colleagues in addressing this with the UNESCO project. No doubt the concept, the staff training required, the methodologies, the short-term outputs, the technical aspects, the need to monitor, the need to evaluate, and get online feedback were some issues that had been addressed, but they were like more or less in a pilot mode. We had at least initiated this discussion from policy to planning to staff development to learner support, digitizing, and particularly infrastructure. And we were therefore, thankfully, somewhat prepared. Now, if we were to direct our attention as to what our mindset was about higher education, say on the 13th of March 2020, we safeguarded free education as the sacred quintessential commodity. We always thought of that we needed more in infrastructure, human resource, facilities, etc. And we had multiple priorities and competing interests. Nevertheless, we had also been made aware with much discussion and based on statistics that there were a lot of unmet needs of tertiary education. From the gross enrollment ratio being far short of what was required for the median average for South Asia, we had a very bad brain drain. I think we were quite the leaders based on World Bank statistics, where over 6,000 professionals migrated per year. And therefore arose the question, are we producing graduates for the world rather than for Sri Lanka? Did we also give real pay attention to the changing needs of andragogy to match the 21st century? No doubt, we felt we needed to do that at some point, but we were catapulted with this tiny virus. No doubt, the change in government, the change in leadership made us also think from November 2019, as His Excellency the President elucidated the need for us to reform educational policy. And that had been their pledge, and no doubt the higher educational sector had to start thinking about it from around January, February of 2020. So while these discussions on the need for us to be better equipped from knowledge and skills appropriate for the technology-based livelihoods, we were catapulted by mid-March into the corona-related shutdown. By then, the presidential task force through Gazette notification was speeded up, and many of us vice chancellors and leaders in the educational field from the other sectors were thrown into core groups, 3 core groups, to address general education, higher education, and vocational education, and later on professional education also was added on. But I must say we always discussed together, and this was probably one of the first instances where education by itself was addressed holistically, and that was through Zoom and Teams, not through other methods. So I must say that even my own life became very different. You know, the focus was fully focused on now how do we address, more than the COVID-19 pandemic, how do we address the changes required for education. And no doubt we were thrown into the shutdown And we pledged, all of us pledged, that we will go on to online learning more or less with an overnight transformation, which was rather probably ambitious on our part, but for an online distance educational format. And what we probably did not realize was that we needed to really change our entire outlook from work-life balance to actual transformation of education. We needed flexibility, both on the student side and the teacher side. We needed to have different forms of engagement with the students, teaching methodologies, and we needed to also appreciate, we needed to maintain and even enhance standards and quality. So this, while we were also talking about the need for long-term emphasis on research and development, innovation, commercialization, as well as to upscale our economy and national development. So while uncertainties were multiple, we also it impacted on us that our economy was going to become very insecure because of the shutdown. So from the technical point of view, learning management systems, which many of you all are, I think, more aware and familiar with than what people like me with one foot in the grave would have been. The infrastructure with internet connection to have a good bandwidth, learner access through device were the three fundamental technical points and supports we needed to address. And at this point, I must say that I would like to thank our director of the UCSC and his staff for working day and night to get the systems through, as well as our network operating center. Rusiru and Lion and Rusiru were even though we were working from home, that's how we function. And no doubt, Learn, the main center for the internet-based service education, negotiated with service providers through His Excellency's office to ensure that as much as possible that the internet connections coming through Learn, that we did not have to pay for the data, the educator as well as the receiver. Nevertheless, many of our students did not own a device. They had to either climb onto hills or go down a hill or go to some special place to access online. But that was our only choice. And also smartphones were also our best option in most instances. But we must not forget that our learners need to own ideally a laptop, but at least a PC, tablet as a priority. Now, until then, how did our students learn? Did they actually have student-centered independent learning, or were they propelled into action to get to that point? Whatever we call the new norm, now it's not so new norm, but there was truly a shift in the demand of our educational lifestyle. And probably it became an opportunity. Now, I would like to recall that we were offered resources such as Coursera, if you remember, which were wonderful courses that we became aware of. And many of us also dabbled around with some of these courses, which we found to be quite interesting from very good centers of learning. And our University Senate was very good to approve piloting these courses. And many of our students and staff did benefit from this. The fact that a distance learner should have plenty of self-motivation also came into focus. So while we say COVID-19 did impact severely on our educational processes and systems, I have to salute the multitude of personnel who gave their best in this transition. As an administrative and the academic lead, as my responsibility as Vice Chancellor, I must say that this experience personifies how challenges imposed on us through such pandemics can be transformed into opportunities. And one of our important aspects that we had to change in our methodology was to develop flexible attitudes, particularly for learning and teaching, in as much as we were stuck in our homes. And if somebody went around shouting that some, say, coconuts were for sale, we loved to run out just to go and buy a coconut, even whether we wanted or not, because that was made us realize how terrible it was to be locked indoors. So I must say, while distance learning had to be encouraged and we had to garner all our capabilities, the fact that all of us were home-based, that our own staff took time to encourage their students, particularly those students from very rural backgrounds, to how to cope back in their own settings, to engage in home gardening, for example, to augment psychosocial adjustment from the sudden transition, because many of them felt that they had no future. They wondered, when shall we finish this course? When are we going to get the certificate and move on in life and help our families? So I must say that a special word has to go to all those academics who, beyond the counselors, I mean, no doubt the counselors help, but every academic turned into a very, very effective counselor, because we created those little WhatsApp groups of 1 to 20 or 25. And that was the most pragmatic e-resource setting we created given the suddenness of it all. At this point, I would also like to, I don't think students are with us, but if and when they hear me, the fact that we did not really know for how long we had shut down. So our hostelers, that's the part that I know, the hostel students who were in our hostels, when they went home, many of them did not take back their laptops, those who own laptops. And that set another set of problems for us to try and get the laptops, to secure the laptops, as well as to try and get them back to them, given the many, many travel restrictions and the health risks that we had. I also need to bring into focus that many of our students had been self-employed, such as giving tuition or working in little settings, from Uber driving to Uber Eats delivery. And therefore, from this busy city life that they had as students, they were plonked back into their rural home-based settings with a lot of parental supervision back again, which was difficult to cope. But I'm sure that they have adjusted themselves, but do miss their peers, their campus, and their teachers and the environment. And I do empathize with them, and I look forward to seeing them. But probably in today's context, we cannot have all of campus back on site at a given moment for, I do not know for how long more. I must also say that many of our students had to face major socioeconomic and gender sensitive issues. And I do empathize with them. And I am very conscious that many of these have to be addressed yet, and we have not fully addressed all these issues. And at this point, I would like to say that our main student welfare branch became very active. And they, with the IT core groups and the student counselors, operationalized the creation of a database so that we had a needs assessment done with the strictest confidentiality to know how many of our students were in dire need of financial and other supports. A student distress fund was initiated with council approval, and that was because particularly members of staff from the faculties of arts and management were clearly of the view that we needed to put our hands in our pocket, and I'm very grateful to them. And it was actually University of Colombo that raised the fact that the Mahapola scholarship should continue. And indeed it has, without a break, because even though it is a huge, colossal amount of money, our students are supported by this, even though a small amount. So even the Student Distress Fund gave way to at least providing 5,000 rupees per the needy students as a one-time payment. And the alumni also helped us and came to our rescue. I must say that we also identified those students with special needs, and therefore my belief is that the entire concept of coping and living and learning with Corona brought out a lot of good capabilities and commitments on our part. Now, we did go into a digital transformation. Online meetings became a standard daily practice. Some of us had Zoom fatigue, I must say, but we were able to clear up many of those cobwebs and start functioning in a new method, new manner. We in fact took pride on becoming paperless, but I would like to ask you as to how long we would take this. And also the fact that we could make our decisions online. So we brought in those necessary legal entities into place through an internal circular that e-signatures and digital certification were no doubt acceptable, and therefore it increased our efficiency, our transparency, and our flexibility. Now, while the benefits of working from home, adopting healthy practices in the working environment, promoting innovation to address social needs, and a fair share of the responsibility falling on the university systems were positive developments, the way I see it, from the COVID-19 pandemic. And we need to work out as to how much of this we can harness for our future implementation. The academia appreciated that online learning requires the development of digital literacy skills, and therefore we need to factor that into our contemporary education. And no doubt IT skills and IT learning has been upscaled in some of those settings, particularly in the humanities and in the performing arts, and a HEAD project has helped us to try and upscale those infrastructure. We also found it appropriate to commence restructuring teaching learning assessment through the alignment with the cyber campus, which had been mainly working with the Faculty of Science and the University School of Computing. But we found that the Director of Quality Assurance and the Career Guidance Unit and the Staff Development Center also linked up with the cyber campus to try and make the best of it for our systems to become appropriate to today's need. So formal online training sessions were offered for our office staff. So even the non-academic staff became more digitized. And I must reiterate that our staff was very, very supportive with this new model of online distance learning. We no doubt had some doubting Thomases, but I think as time went on, they were all realized that they could fall in line. And in fact, the digital transformation has gone beyond just teaching and learning, and not just up was that the e-resources that were provided by the library, journal databases were used at greater speed. And this became ratified with the numbers that of access and hits. Online surveys were initiated for obtaining student feedback, and we received quite good feedback not only on the students' access to whatever learning material and capability of connecting with their teachers, but also the negative side of socioeconomic and gender-based issues. So as time progressed, the digital engagement became apparent amongst diverse groups. I am very happy to say that student-centered community e-activities, such as the Gavel Club, societies related to social cultural groups, leadership development, Rotaract, Leo Club, Golden Z's, on psychological issues, and even to live stream Sir David Attenborough's Planet 2020 and address issues about environment became something which brought in students and staff to work together. No doubt now we have mindfulness meditation programs, and all these became possible thanks to, or I do not know whether we can say thanks to, but that tiny little virus particle that brought about such a change, such a sudden change in our lifestyle. More so, the online delivery of learning for students with disabilities was identified as a huge problem. So there is no doubt that the special needs, those with special needs need more face-to-face teaching, and the Faculty of Arts, which accommodates the majority of such students, have been able to develop the Center of Disability Research, Education and Practice, and done much in terms of staff development and policy formulation. And I'm looking forward to that phase where we can get back our students with special needs to get that special rapid revision and to deal with their examinations. Now, the digital transformation as a collective project to ensure quality transition from on-site learning to almost near total digital to eventually a blended learning method is what we need to address in the long term. And that is something that we clearly need to give due attention to. And I'm very thankful to Professor Heba Gamage, Professor Pavitra Kailasapilli, and many others for taking on the baton of blended learning, which started no doubt with the UNESCO project in 2017 and has had its first and second phases where there was staff orientation, staff development, and also even development of some amount of learning material. But no doubt this needed much more focused attention. Excuse me. And therefore, I would also like to mention that when we looked at the blended learning, actually in the pre-COVID era, we found that UCIARS in Valigatta, where many of them were commercial farmers, were the ones who were most sort of the best users and the most successful in their learning methodology through the digital platform. So getting on to the other aspects that we needed to work out how best we function with the smart classroom that came with the UNESCO project, which is based in the library. We still need to commission it because some more equipment has to come in, and then to try and link with the other learning resource centers that were opened with the 100 years in the science faculty, and also make it supporting learning platform, which will be a novel experience both for teachers and the students, is something we need to give our due attention to. And I know that from the narratives that I have heard from you, that I'm sure we can address these, take this as the future direction and get on to more, no doubt, face-to-face, but also digitized methods of lectures, discussions, guided practice, reading, and so on, you know, covering all the subject areas and learning areas of our university. Now, when it came to online examinations, we did face a couple of issues, but I'm very thankful to every faculty that has been able to bring in students as and when necessary and hold their exams, even though there is a shortage of hostels, but also to even, for example, the Faculty of Law has got on to an online examination these days, which is something we need to salute. Now, in terms of the postgraduate studies, the Faculty of Graduate Studies also initiated online postgraduate examinations. They were used to online the platform provision of the knowledge transfer, but no doubt they also used intensive online proctoring and reported to us of more or less event-free processes, which was very encouraging. I must also reiterate that the blended learning provides structured opportunities to learn by using more than one teaching or training method. And therefore, it can be inside, outside the classroom, synchronous, asynchronous, and have many, many ways of addressing. And in fact, we have had to discuss with UNESCO just over this last weekend to how to beef up our infrastructure, both with UGC funding as well as with UNESCO funding, as well as ahead funding, and try to get to that point where we can still continue the online or digitized methods of teaching and learning, at least at a reasonable that while these discussions were operational, there arose crisis after crisis. We handed over hostels for quarantine, which led to challenges which we never envisaged. Convocation had to be postponed, and there were rumblings and grumblings, but I'm sure we will have the convocation in due course, hopefully in the first week of May. Meanwhile, we came across some sad situations where there were abusive postings on our website, which transgress the boundaries of basic decency, and therefore, we as a responsible university have had to address some of the important aspects of cyber rules and regulations. Similarly, sports and recreation have been dampened, but I'm very grateful to those from the physical education for conducting yoga and other practices online and keeping people active. In as much as the mindfulness meditation group, which was an offshoot of the AHEAD program, which was across faculties and which is much awaited by many of us. There was live streaming of general concepts such as environment. Language learning has also been prioritized, although we had to get our act together about it. I must say that the university test for English language UTEL is also going to be located in our university for the entire university system, and therefore our digital mode as being one of the best in the country has been well recognized. While we have journalists among us, not only the formal sectors such as the journalism unit and Sri Pali, but also many, many journalists among us. And I think this is high time through such webinar discussions for us to address issues such as ethics in journalism and also coping with COVID, with psychological and soft skill development. I must also thank the university medical officer and the PHIs, because the health and safety was coming in crops. We were having positives, we were having first contacts, second contacts, and I must say Dr. Vasudeva has been the epitome of tolerance and also very calm and collective sphere, which the calmness permeated to everyone around. Now we are in, as we were discussing, in the vaccination stage, and we have had to prioritize and bargain for some form of vaccination, although we have written to the authorities and we are hoping against hope that we can get about 2,000 injections to be able to share amongst you all. But please go ahead and immunize yourselves, although immunization does not give you 100% coverage. It's more psychological sense of security. I have to also thank the security, cleaning services, marshals, and the general administration, so ably led by Mr. Prasanna and all the DRs, SARs, for having kept the flag flying. The works engineer came through thick and thin and fixed all those entry points with hand washing facilities. The Bursa linked with Professor Nalin De Silva and others from chemistry and made the cleaning the sanitized cells so that we could have those facilities. Confucius Institute and others gave us loads of masks, at least for the start, which gave us a good jump start. No doubt we also provided masks, we bought masks, but we need to also be mindful about environmental pollution from masks. The hostels and the subwardens have been kept up and running, and we are having students in batches for specific tasks. The library, as I said, has been a maypole for the sources, the e-resources, and I'm very thankful to Dr. Vijay Tunga and others. So let me end by reiterating that consciously or unconsciously, our inherent Lankan culture encourages us to counter the threats imposed on higher education from COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, overall, probably we have not missed out on much of time by nothing more than 2 months, which we can easily catch up, is what I am reassured by all the deans and directors. So there is this management acronym VUCA, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And we as a responsible group have faced volatility with vision, uncertainty with understanding, complexity with clarity, and ambiguity with agility. Our fundamental values to prioritize, risk manage, make pragmatic decisions, foster a change, seek sustainable solutions while encouraging quick responses and a holistic outlook were things of excellence. May we be able to cope with such transformation and produce those graduates with the trademark made in UOC. So we have survived and sustained. We have ensured that no one is left behind. We have harmonized our staff and students. We have valued team spirit. We have developed holistic outreach, all through very good networking. And that is something I have to thank each and everyone in our university community. So let us be able to cope with this transformation, produce those graduates with the trademark made in UOC, who ask not what university and society can do for us, but what can the university community do for society. Stay safe and well, and may you remain the best of the best in Mother Lanka and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam. That's an excellent discussion on what University of Colombo amidst all the challenges, but you as the live wire behind that has achieved during the past 365 days amidst COVID-19. And it was an excellent walk down the memory lane. You brought to our memory what we had done, the initial fear and isolation, as well as the way you wanted all of us to convert that challenge into an opportunity, as you mentioned. And actually, you mentioned certain things even we did not know. It was a very, very comprehensive discussion. But I don't want to take any more time, but I would like to invite questions from our audience. And Professor Pallewata has just mentioned that there are 2 students also. So I'm sure that there will be many questions the participants would like to ask you. Please, I invite all of you. Uh, not all can ask questions, but maybe Madam might have time for a couple of questions.
Madam, you mentioned now about moving forward, because that's something that I'm pretty interested in.
Yes.
So I mean, I don't know what the UGC or government policy is on this, but obviously we cannot let go of the online component, right? I realized its value because it actually did things that I couldn't achieve before when we were, we were completely on site. So I would certainly like, obviously, a particular component to be there. Of course, the only thing, I think this is actually more the students than myself, these external visits we make and the field experience, right? I cannot recreate those things, right? In a virtual, so I mean, through videos even. So with that exception and that social, the camaraderie that it brings, right? We also get very close to the students when we go on field visits and we stay overnight and, so that is obviously the one. And I really hope that, we can commence those as soon as possible. But for the rest, I realized there were huge advantages in being able to teach online and get people who would never have been otherwise, come to teach.
I think basically, Nirmali, I think we found more time to ponder and think about, and the staff student contacts in smaller groups. I mean, now say our field of medicine, we thought nothing but in the ward, but students were going in piecemeal to the wards and then connecting up with their teachers and discussing the patients in much greater depth. So there are the goods and the bads, no doubt, but we need to appreciate and work out how much we can do online and how much we really need to meet.
Yes, and that's what you said was being talked about right now, yeah?
Yes.
Anyway, I do hope that, all of us can move forward. And one thing I have to tell you, of course, this was, I think, one-off thing. There were so many Sri Lankan specialists, I mean, in various fields who were trapped in Sri Lanka because they couldn't, get back. And they gave visiting lectures and they were like, really, gave a very good, they opened up wider vistas to my students.
But if we have changed our student to student-centered learning, that is something we have to determine, but I would guess we have.
Yes, to a certain extent.
More than what it was in a sort of a large student-numbered lecture hall.
Yes, and the people who are normally very quiet and wouldn't answer started answering, in a Zoom lecture.
So it broke that barrier. No doubt it's tough times. We don't know what is in store for us. Italy is again in lockdown. They talk of this South African British variant. I think these are mutations. It's not just through air travel and coming in boxes. So, these are issues that we will have to face. All these viruses have had mutations, even dengue, there are 4 strains, they keep mutating and creating problems. So Corona is not going to leave us. So that is my honest opinion.
Yes, thank you.
Madam, can I talk? It's
Of
Vajra.
course. Yes, Vajra. Yes.
I just thought, since you all are talking about blended learning, I thought we should speak up about blended administrative aspect of it, because you have opened up many things that I actually didn't think about. We have had many vivas online, many results boards online, and then so many things online. None of us actually did not know that we could do this online. And then online transcript issuing system is one of the best things which recently came up, and students do not need to visit the library, neither the faculty nor the exam branch. They can, and then you can transmit the transcript via a digital portal to World Education Service. That is a big thing. It takes only few hours for the verification agent to go through the credentials. So many things have, we could explore many things. I think it was all because of your vision. I never thought that we recently, but not recently, during the second lockdown, during last October, November, we had an undergraduate results board online. Went to a sudden lockdown, 10 days Colombo, and had no way of releasing results. So could do it. So all that things, we never knew that we could do these things. So thank you once again to everyone who supported, especially you, madam, and then everyone, non-academic, academic, the technical staff. So I just wanted to share that the experience which we are still taking and learning, and then to improve the systems and the processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, totally agree.
Yes. Any other questions, Professor Pavitra or Professor Hewagamage?
Yes, I'm happy to share and ask a question. It's a very interesting day, madam. I mean, the March 15th last year and today, almost 1 year. But if you look at the mindset of the people, okay, when the pandemic and the many things happened, forced us during the last year to do the things in a different way. And but it's the same people 1 year ago, and their mindset. I mean, this mindset consists of a lot of things. I think it's even the belief and the attitude and the experience. It comes, and it's still. I think it's the change in the mindsets is vary from one person to another person. Even some people still knows the value and advantage. They don't like to change because there are so many reasons. Sometimes people are afraid to change because it will be a threat for the people. I mean, the very simple example, the blended learning, some people consider is a threat for a academic identity. I mean, they think they never wanted to change, even very hard to change the people mindsets. And but I personally feel that we can't escape from this, as you correctly pointed out. Corona isn't something happened to teach us the sustainability. Without the corona, think about in a year, what is the situation now? How much would have been wasted, and we may go into a kind of a speed that will lead to a disaster in the whole world. And I think it's the development, it's leading to disaster. Now the whole world, the development, the dimensions have changed, and that is good for the sustainability. This is the decade for the sustainability. And what has happened is good for the mankind, even though we are suffering some people. But if people don't change the mindset, I think we may suffer a lot. I mean, the personally or in the society or there. So I think I'm happy to hear your comment and your view on that one.
Thank you. I mean, I'm sure, Professor Heva, that as time goes on, people will get adjusted to this. They have got adjusted to it. But I feel, I feel sorry for the student, but at the same time, if they didn't lose too much of their time in their learning, teaching, clearing the those required courses and course units well, we have not lost much, and therefore let's await the new entrance. That would be the true test of our system as to how they cope straight from school, but they've also got a good dose of iskole from television, etc. But anyway, we'll see. So thank you so much, Professor Dr. Wijetunga, for giving us this opportunity. I think having these evening webinars is good fun, and I would also like to propose, if you don't mind, that we have a lot of academics who have a repository of their research based experience, which is very unique.
Yes.
And if we could get them also to have webinars or participate in a webinar, it will be wonderful.
Yes, madam. That will be our next initiative once we have launched this. Actually, we are very grateful not only for being the resource person today, but also for the excellent leadership you have given us throughout the past couple of years. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for everybody who has participated. And let's make the University of Colombo flag flying with all our efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you too.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.